Hey folks, as always, I hope that you're doing well. My name's Kyle Shultz. I'm with Shultz Photo School. Welcome to the Nikon D750 user guide. We really have two goals here today. First is to help you get started as fast as possible with your D750, and second is to help you get it optimized. It's a really powerful camera once you get it all dialed in. Four main things for you today. First is the 10 camera commandments. Then we're going to talk about the highlights of this camera. Then we're going to talk about how to customize it. And then finally, we're going to give you a little bit of lens and accessory advice going forward. Now, if you haven't heard of the 10 camera commandments, fear ye not. This is kind of a Shultz Photo School thing. We have a course called the Autofocus where we go over the 10 camera commandments. And the basic idea is this: if you can learn these 10 functions on your camera or any camera, you will be able to get 99% of the shots in your mind's eye. You'll be able to drive it like a pro. Cameras these days have a lot of buttons, have a lot of functions. They're all great, but the ones that make all the difference are these 10 right here. So learn these and you are 9 out of 10 yards there. And so with that said, I'm not going to be going over the theory of each one of these points. I'm not going to give a lesson on ISO and how it works, and then on drive modes and how they work, and then on exposure compensation and white balance and all that. Otherwise, I'd be here for an hour and a half. This user guide is more about where these buttons are. And as a matter of fact, we do these user guides in mind with our PhotoFix members in mind after they've completed the PhotoFix. They learn all the theory, now they just need to learn the buttons, and that's what this is about. So with that said, if you are confused with this theory or want to know more about it, I would send you first to SchultzPhotoschool.com and just encourage you to start with one of our free courses, and you'll be there in no time. But let's get started here. The shutter release button, the most important button on your camera, it's the take the picture button. It's the one right up here. For it to work, first of all, you have to give your camera life. And how you're going to do that first is just get a battery in here, flip it upside down. You'll have your battery compartment right up here, and if you just flip it out, and then you can get the battery in there, and then you have your memory card that you'd want to get in right here. You have 2 slots, and then you would want to get your lens on. To get your lens on, you have this little button right here. It's a little lens release button. Push it in, and then you can rotate your lens on and off. So now you have your lens on, and then you then can go to your shutter button and turn it from off to on. You have this little toggle switch around the shutter button, and now halfway down to focus, all the way down to take the pic. That's the shutter release button. Next is your shooting modes. It's on the top left of the camera, as you can see circled here, and we'll show it to you over here. What you need to do is press in this little button and then rotate the knob. Go from auto to program. P is for program, and then you have S for shutter speed priority, A for aperture priority, and then M for manual. We're not going to go through user 1 or user 2 or the scene modes. Those are fine and great, but what we really focus on is aperture priority, manual, shutter priority, and all those kind of things. So it's right there. Pretty easy to set those, of course. Number 3 is ISO. If you look at the back of your camera, your second to left button is ISO. You press that in and then rotate this thumb dial back here. I call the one on the back the thumb dial. The one on the front, you have another dial. I call it the index finger dial. Canon calls it Nikon calls it command dial, sub-command dial, whatever. I call it thumb and index finger scroll dial. And we'll just push in the ISO button, and then while it's pushed in, you can rotate the thumb dial to manually change the ISO. And then you can rotate the index dial with it pushed in, and you will toggle in between auto ISO on and auto ISO off. And so this works really well on this camera, and you can leave auto ISO on even in manual mode if you want to set your shutter speed and aperture manually, but still let the camera choose the lowest ISO. So it's still kind of semi-automatic there, but it does a good job. That's your ISO button. We got to keep this moving. Next, you'll want to get in autofocus mode over manual focus mode. And to do that, look at this little button right here in front of your camera, right below the lens release button. And you'll see that it has a little switch from AF to M. So once you get it into AF, then you'll notice that there's actually a button within the switch. When you press in the button and rotate the back thumb dial, you'll rotate between AF single shot, AF continuous, and AF automatic. So single shot's where when you press halfway down it locks the focus and it's done focusing, and then continuous is when you press halfway down and it continues to track that subject until you click all the way. And so those are the two modes that we focus on. That's how you would set that mode, is just in here and then your thumb dial. Once you have that set though, the next important thing to talk about is AF area. How big you want your AF clusters, if you just want one single point, if you want everything and anything in between, there's a lot of options. There's less options for AF single shot than there is for continuous. So let's start in single shot. Right now, if I look through, I'm going to press this down, I'm in AFS for single shot. And then if I press in and rotate my index finger dial, here's what I'll get. I get, first of all, just the one little square. So the pinpoint focus over one of the AF sensors. And then if I rotate it to the right, I get 4 of them in a diamond shaped pattern. So just a little bit bigger area to tell your camera to focus within. And then last but not least, I have 51 points, just the whole AF area. That's where you're going to tell your camera just to choose the focal point. We would never ever have recommended this in yesteryear, but cameras are getting so good now with facial detection that it actually is pretty useful. If you have face priority detection on and just point this at a face and hit focus, it will focus on that face really well. Old school, I still like the single AF point for being very, very exact. Now when you go then to AFS, or AFC rather, continuous, you get a few more options. So I'm going to rotate to the right. I start off with that single little square, and then I go to a group of 9, so a bigger group, and then I go to a bigger group even still, which is 21. This is useful if you're tracking motion and it's hard to keep that one little square on it. You want just a bigger cluster that you have to keep on it. But then you go to 51 and then you go to 3D. We're going to talk about 3D more later. It's one of the highlights of this camera. It's one of the highlights of the Nikon system the past couple years. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But then I go on to that diamond shaped layout again, and then finally to the whole auto idea, but just within AF continuous. So that's how you select your AF area. Number 6, we'll keep this going on and talk about our drive modes. Now to get the drive mode set, there's this little button on the corner of the camera here. And you just want to press that in and then rotate this little sub dial here. And you'll see these different options, S, CL, CH, Q. It stands for single shot, so one shot at a time every time you press this shutter button. And then you go to continuous low, then to continuous high. High is 6.5 frames a second. Low, you can set what you want. Then you go to quiet, quiet continuous, the timer, and then the mirror lockup. So that's your drive modes. Let's keep going here. Again, if that's kind of over your head, just start with us for free at SchultzPhotoschool.com. You'll be there in no time. The exposure compensation button is right up here. It's this plus minus button. Push that in and then rotate your thumb scroll wheel, and you'll see your camera go plus 0.3, plus 0.7, plus 1, so third stop increments. You can go all the way to plus 5. So 5 stops brighter than what your camera would want to meter it at, and then you can go all the way down to -5. So that is the easiest way to tell your camera to make the picture brighter or darker. Number 8 is your white balance. How you do your white balance is you would find WB over here on the left side. Press that in and then rotate your thumb dial, and you'll go through all of your different white balance settings. So that is white balance. Okay, number 9 is how to review the images. Pretty straightforward and whatnot. First, just look on the upper left corner of your camera. There's this little play button. Press play and it'll bring up those pictures. I actually just took one, as you can see, of the camera room here. Hit to the left of this circular pad here. Hit to the left to go backwards in pictures. Hit to the right to go forward. To zoom in, there's this little magnifying glass here with the plus. Press that and it zooms in. Press again, it keeps zooming in. And then you can scroll around the picture with this directional keypad. To zoom out, hit the magnifying glass with the minus. Then last thing I want to show you is you can actually, when it's zoomed all the way out, you can press up on that keypad, on that directional keypad, and it will toggle through a few other views. So just the picture, and then it goes to the histogram with all of the exposure information, file naming, and then this final one with just some file information. You can set more screens to come up on that, but we're not going to go into that right now. That's the big stuff right there. Finally, to set RAW and or JPEG, there's a time for both, but the easiest one on this camera is just to look on that left side again. You'll see a button that says quality. Press that in and then rotate your thumb dial again. You'll go from RAW to JPEG Fine to JPEG Normal to JPEG Basic, and then RAW plus JPEG Fine, RAW plus JPEG Normal, RAW plus JPEG Basic, and then back to RAW. So that is the 10 camera commandments. Learn those and you're well on your way. Again, I don't want to sound like too pitchy here, but if you want to learn more about each one of those in theory, just get started with one of the free courses at SchultzPhotoschool.com. Let's talk about the highlights of this camera. The two big headlines for sure are the camera's dynamic range and this 3D focus. And what I mean by dynamic range is low light ability is great. So 6400 ISO 12800 is phenomenal. It's very usable. But then this dynamic range, just that difference between highlight and shadow, is so awesome, especially in post-production. You can really recover tons of shadow detail and shadow color and shadow information in post-processing. 4 and 5 stops of recovery is completely usable. And so what you can do with this camera, we're going to talk about in a little bit, is you can expose for those highlights and then bring up the shadows in post. And it's like having HDR processing just within the sensor itself from developing one RAW file that way. So incredible dynamic range and low light ability. Next, let's talk about this 3D focus. This is just one of my favorite parts about the recent Nikon cameras. What 3D focus is essentially you can only get it when you're in AFC. So let's talk about that first. Just remember that to get this 3D focus to work, first of all, you have to press this button in and then do your thumb scroll to where it's in AFC for continuous, and then you rotate the front dial with this same button pushed in to go to 3D. So in the past, if I wanted to track motion, we're in continuous, and if I had my focal, my AF point over to the right, because I wanted you to be on the right side of my frame, I'd press in and hold, and as you moved across the frame, I'd have to keep that single point over you the whole time, or else it'd lose focus. Or I'd have to keep that small group over you the whole time, or else it'd lose focus. What 3D does is as you move this way in the frame, it'll actually move the AF points with you to where I don't have to keep recomposing and keep you on this side of the frame. I can let you wander over to this side of the frame and it'll move those AF points and keep focusing. It'll keep you in focus as you get further to me or as you get further away and then closer to me. It sounds like that's how it should have worked forever, right? But this is just a development really within the past few years, and it works so well is what's so amazing about it. It works well enough to where if you focus on the eye of your child at say 1.8, where there is so little depth of field, and then recompose, realize that when you recompose, you change the focal plane just a little bit. So much so that at 1.8, you might not have their eye in focus anymore. But so what this 3D focus is good enough is if you go at 1.4, focus on that eye, they're real close to you so you have no depth of field, hardly at all, and then recompose, it'll actually then move the focal point, stay on the eye, and make the little micro adjustment in the lens to keep the eye perfectly in focus. So that's how good this is at recognizing the shape and the contrast of everything that you started on, and it'll track. It'll track as you recompose or track as the subject moves within the frame. So a really cool highlight of this camera for sure. Definitely know that it still does 1080p video and live view shooting and all that kind of stuff. To get there, it's just this little toggle switch back here. You can go from movie to live view and you just press that in. It shoots up it locks up the mirror, and then you can do all that. But we're not going to go into that. It does have Wi-Fi, the last little deal I wanted to mention there. To turn on Wi-Fi is a little bit tricky. You want to go to your menu and then you're looking for like a little Wi-Fi icon to the left, but you're not going to find it. You actually have to go to the wrench icon, the setup menu, and then hit to the right on your directional pad, and then you got to go way, way down. Keep going, keep going, keep scrolling, and you go all the way down to Wi-Fi, and finally you have your little Wi-Fi signal. Press OK, network connection, go to the right again, and then go to enable. When you press enable, what will happen is your camera here will start emitting a Wi-Fi signal, and then you want to take your phone and find that Wi-Fi network, connect to it on your phone, and then you would open up your wireless mobile utility app. So it's a really catchy name, but you would open up that app, and then you could view the pictures on your camera. You could also take some remote control of the camera as well, meaning you can control the camera from your phone. It's limited function, but you can do it. So that's a good highlight for this camera as well. Let's talk about a few customizations that you can make to this camera that will make it a lot more useful. First of all is back button focus. This is the first place I start with every camera. It's just, if you have it set up correctly, it's very, very useful. Most people who've tried back button focus and don't like it, I guarantee you just haven't had it set up correctly. We're not going to go into every last detail here. That's a whole nother lesson. And I'd again invite you to go to SchultzPhotoschool.com to get started on those. But the basic advantage of back button focus at the very, very basic level is that instead of focus, recomposing, and shooting, and focus, recomposing, shooting every time, I could focus with my back button on you, recompose, and then shoot, 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 shoot. That way, if you have a kid that's going through a great smile or a laughter, you don't have to focus, recompose, shoot, focus, recompose, shoot, focus, recompose, shoot every time. You just get it focused and recomposed right where you want it, and then you can fire away through that moment, and you just get a lot more shots that way. So how you'd want to set it up on this camera is, first of all, just go and hit the menu button, top left here. And then you want to go to the little pencil icon, custom setting menu, hit to the right, go down to F for controls, then go down to F4, and then assign AFL button, you'd want to choose AF on. So keep hitting right and then scroll to where you get to AF on and then press OK. And now you will not be able to focus by pressing your shutter halfway down. That won't do anything. Your AF start will just be on this button back here. And I'll kind of get it in this other camera, AFL, AEL. That's where you'll be focusing from. So that's that one. Let's talk about a quicker way to set ISO. Up here on the top of the camera, there's this little red record button that does nothing if you're in still shooting. So why not assign it to something? Here's how we'll do it. Again, we'll go to menu, and then back in that little pencil icon, the custom setting menu, this is going to be in F again. We're going to go all the way down to F9. Press to the right, assign movie record button. Press to the right again, you'll see just a few options, and one of them is ISO sensitivity. Now when I'm shooting, I can just press down that red button and then rotate my thumb scroll wheel, and it changes the ISO. So no longer have to do two buttons at once or two hands at once and look at it. I can just do it while I'm shooting, which is really useful if light changes fast. If you go from a wedding during the ceremony inside the church and then they walk right outside into the bright sun, you can keep shooting but quickly change that as you're going. Okay, let's keep this thing moving. Let's talk about the function button next. And the function button is the one down here by my ring finger. I love to set this to where when I press it in, it goes over to highlight weighted metering. What that means is it's going to meter the scene based on the brightest part of that scene. When I let go, it immediately goes back to the normal evaluative metering. So it's really cool. It's like having two different metering systems just built in the camera, ready to fire at any time. And the reason it's great again is because this camera does that trick so well, meaning you meter for that highlight, and then in the back, in the post-production, you can bring up those shadows. So here's how you'd set that. I'd want to go to F2. So again, go to menu, and then down to the pencil icon, then F, and then go to 2, assign function button. Go to the right, and it's this little icon that you're looking for, highlight weighted metering, press OK. And now that just works right when you hold it in. So how it would be in practice is you're going along shooting and then you see this beautiful view with a lot of dynamic range and you thinking, oh, I want to expose for the highlights. All you have to do is press this in and hold it, then get your focal point, recompose, and take the picture, and it just exposed for the highlights. And now you let go and you're back to normal. So I really, really love that function there. Let's talk about the PV button. I have PR for preview button, but it's PV on this one. I like to set this to where when I push it, I see a little level at the bottom of my screen. Some people leave it on preview, but I preview an image just by taking a picture and previewing it on my nice LCD screen on the back. So I'd rather sign this for something else. So the way you sign it for the horizon level is just go back to that menu and then F again, and then go down to F3, assign preview button, go to the right again, and I like to do viewfinder virtual horizon. Next one is AF point orientation, and I like to turn this on. While I'm in the system here and I have the camera on this, I'm just going to go over to the left and then show you that I go to A and then A8. So ignore F on this slide. It's A8 and you'll see store points by orientation, and I like to turn that to yes for on. What that will do is it will remember where your AF point is the last time you had it in that particular orientation. So this is landscape right now. Let's say I have my AF point in the middle and towards the top. So I've moved it from the middle just towards the middle top. So it's right here. If I turn it this way and I don't have it on orientation on, it stays, now it's to the middle left. So then if I'm taking a portrait of someone and I want them in the upper middle, I'd have to use this little D-pad thing and move my AF point to the right and then up. But then when I turn it back this way, it would be on the right side. So when you have AF point orientation on, it remembers where the AF point is when you go from landscape to portrait. So when I come back this way, it's on the middle top. Then I go this way and it automatically changes to the middle top and back and forth. So that's very helpful. It'll save you a lot of this D-pad thing moving around your AF point. With that said, let's talk about some lens and accessory recommendations. This is the last thing here. This sensor is so good that it will really benefit from putting good glass in front of it. And so good sharp glass. So the first thing I would recommend is just your good walk around lens. Sure, you can get the kit lens, even like the 24-120, but this Sigma 24-105 is sharper and it's got great color and great contrast. It's great build quality. It's the Sigma Art line, which has just gotten a lot of rave reviews over the past couple of years, and for good reason. But this is sharp and it's a great focal range. I love having that 70-105, that little extra reach than the infamous 24-70 2.8. Now it is f4, but it does have vibration reduction in it. So you've got that going for you. And it's just a great value. Above all, it's just a really, really good value. If you do need that extra stop, that 2.8 from 4, say you're inside shooting sports and you just need that extra little bit of light, which I understand, I, of course, still highly recommend the 24-70 2.8, and I love that Nikon has the VR version, the vibration reduction version. It is so expensive, so be prepared. If you want to save some money, you don't have to get it with the VR, especially, if you know that these ISOs work really well, very high, you might not want to get the VR version. But this is just such a staple in any pro's bag, and so I've got to recommend it. It's just a great lens, sharp and fast and all that kind of good stuff. Another staple in the pro bag is the 70-200. This is the version 3, which is the E. I think the version 2 was like G, which is a weird naming schematic from Nikon. I wish they just say Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3. But this is the Mark 3 version. It is so light for this size of lens. I really love that. It's super, super fast AF, really sharp and contrasty, just a beautiful lens. The only thing I don't like about it is that the focus ring is on the end now and not here where it's always been. I've made a whole different video about this. I'm not going to go into it right now, but it's just backwards to me. You want to hold this lens like this all day, and then you can't reach the focus ring. You now have to hold it two-handed everywhere you go. Next up are prime lenses. Nikon makes really good prime lenses from medium price to very expensive, so I highly recommend any of those. But what I own and love are the Sigma art lenses, especially the 35, 50, and 85. This is the 35, this is the 85. 1.4 rather, super, just beautiful bokeh, super sharp, really great AF performance, really great build quality, and just an exceptional value, and that's why I recommend those. And then I just want to recommend the Flashpoint speed light, the Flashpoint mono light with their little controller. These are $100 if you don't want TTL, like 150 or 170 if you want TTL. $500 if you don't want TTL, or $750 if you do, and 600 watts per second, battery powered like the Profoto B1s. They have this little control that will control them both simultaneously and mix and match. So I love the Flashpoint system. It's one of the best values I've seen, and it works really, really well. So that's what we have for you. Oh, by the way, I love the little battery grips too, so I'll just throw that one in there. We're out of time. If you would visit us at shultzphotoschool.com. Our goal is to help parents take better pictures of their kids. Sign up for a free course, and we would love to have you just kind of get involved with us there. But hey, I hope that you enjoyed this. If you have the Nikon D750, congratulations, it's a great camera. Reach out to us here if you have any questions, and we'll be glad to answer them. All right, thanks so much for tuning in.